and seeing no prospect of success, was obliged to give up his attempt and return to the north. This he acknowledged in a letter to Captain Sir James Clark Ross, with whose intention to explore the South Seas he had become acquainted, in which the following words occur. Quote, "I hope you intend to circumnavigate the Antarctic Circle. I made 70 degrees of it." End quote. Captain Ross, however, was himself greatly confused in his attempts to navigate the southern region. In his account of the voyage, he says at page 96, quote, "We found ourselves every day from 12 to 6 miles by observation and advance of our reckoning." End quote. Quote, "By our observations we found ourselves 58 miles to the eastward of our reckoning in 2 days." End quote. And in this and other ways all the great navigators have been frustrated in their efforts, and have been more or less confounded in their attempts to sail around the earth, upon or beyond the Antarctic Circle. But if the southern region is a pole or center like the north, there would be little difficulty in circumnavigating it, for the distance round would be comparatively small. When it is seen that the earth is not a sphere, but a plane having only one center, the north, and that the south is the vast icy boundary of the world, the difficulties experienced by circumnavigators can be easily understood. Having given a surface or bird's eye view of the earth, the following sectional representation will aid in completing the description. That's figure 11. EE represents the earth, WW the great deep, or the waters which surround the land, and N the northern center, and SS sections of the southern ice. At the present description is purely zetetic, and as every fact must therefore have its fullest value assigned to it, and its consequences represented, a peculiarity must be pointed out in the foregoing diagram. It will be observed that from about points EE, the surface of the water rises towards the south, SS. It's clearly ascertained that the altitude of the water in various parts of the world is much influenced by the pressure of the atmosphere. However, this pressure is caused, and it is well known that the atmosphere pressure in the south is constantly less than it is in the north, and therefore the water in the southern region must always be considerably higher than it is in the northern. Hence the peculiarity referred to in the diagram. The following quotation from Sir James Ross's Voyages, page 483, will corroborate the above statements. Quote, "Our barometrical experiments appear to prove that a gradual diminution of atmospheric pressure occurs as we proceed southwards from the Tropic of Capricorn. It has hitherto been considered that the mean pressure of the atmosphere at the level of the sea was nearly the same in all parts of the world, as no material difference occurs between the equator and the highest northern latitudes. The causes of the atmospheric pressure being so very much less in the southern than in the northern hemispheres remains to be determined. Thus, putting all theories aside, we have seen that direct experiment demonstrates the important truth that the earth is an extended plain, literally stretched out upon the waters, founded on the seas and established on the floods, standing in the water and out of the water. How far the southern icy region extends horizontally, or how deep the waters upon and in which the earth stands or is supported, are questions which cannot yet be answered. And I'll note, even in 2015, there are places of the oceans we've never mapped the floors. In zetetic philosophy, the foundation must be well secured, progress must be made step by step, making good the ground as we proceed. And whenever a difficulty presents itself or evidence fails to carry us farther, we must promptly and candidly acknowledge it and prepare for future investigation, but never fill up the inquiry by theory and assumption. In the present instance, there is no practical evidence as to the extent of the southern ice and the, quote, great deep. Who shall say whether the depth and extent of the mighty waters have a limit, or constitute the world without an end? Having advanced direct and special evidence that the surface of the earth is not convex, but on the contrary, a vast and irregular plane. It now becomes important that the leading phenomena upon which the doctrine of rotundity has been founded should be carefully examined. First, it is contended that because of the hull of an outward-bound vessel disappears before the masthead, the water must be convex, and therefore the Earth is a globe. In this conclusion, however, there is an assumption involved, visual, that such a phenomenon can only result from a convex surface. Inquiry will show that this is erroneous. If we select for observation a few miles of straight and level railway, we shall find that the rails, which are parallel, appear in the distance to approach each other, but the two rails which are nearest together do so more rapidly than those which are furthest asunder, as shown in the following diagram, figure 12. Figures 12 and 13. Let the observer stand at the point A, looking in the direction of the arrows, and the rails 1, 2, 3, 4 will appear to join at the point B, but the rail 5, 6 will appear to have converged only as far as C towards B. Again, let a train be watched from the point A on figure 13. The observer looking from A with his eye midway between the bottom of the carriage and the rail will see the diameter of the wheels gradually diminish as they recede. The lines 1, 2, and 1, 4 will appear to approach each other until at the point B they will come together, and the space, including the wheels between the bottom of the carriage and the rail, will there disappear. The floor of the carriage will seem to be sliding without wheels upon the rail 1, 2, but the lines 5, 6, and 7, 8 will yet have converged only to C and D. The same phenomenon may be observed with the long row of lamps, where the ground is a straight line throughout its entire length, as represented in figure 14. Figures 14 and 15. The lines 1, 2, and AD will converge at the point D, and the pedestal of the lamp at D will seem to have disappeared, but the line 3, 4, which represents the true altitude of the lamps, will only have converged to the point C. A narrow bank running along the side of a straight portion of railway, upon which poles are placed for supporting the wires of the electric telegraph, will produce the same appearance, as shown in figure 15. Talking about telephone poles. The bank having the altitude 1.13 and 1.24 will, in the distance of 2 or 3 miles according to its depth, disappear to the eye of an observer placed at figure 1, and the telegraph pole at figure 2 will seem not to stand upon a bank at all, but upon the actual railway. The line 3, 4 will merge into the line 1, 2 at the point B, while the line 5, 6 will only have descended to the position C. Many other familiar instances could be given to show the true law of perspective, which is that parallel lines appear in the distance to converge to one and the same datum line, but to reach it at different distances if themselves dissimilarly distant. This law being remembered, it's easy to understand how the hull of an outward-bound ship, although sailing upon a plane surface, disappears before the masthead. On figure 16, let AB represent the surface of the water, CH the line of sight, and ED the altitude of the masthead. Then, as AB and CH are nearer to each other than AB and ED, they will converge and appear to meet at the point. That's figure 16. H, which is the practical, or as it would be better to call the optical horizon, the hull of the vessel being contained within the lines of AB and CH, must gradually diminish as these converge until at H, or the horizon, it enters the vanishing point and disappears. But the masthead represented by the line ED is still above the horizon at H, and will require to sail more or less according to its altitude beyond the point H before it sinks into the line CH, or in other words, before the lines AB and ED form the same angles as AB and CH. It will be evident that that should the elevation of the observer be greater than C, the horizon or vanishing point would not be formed at H, but at a greater distance, and therefore the hull of the vessel would be longer visible. Or, if when the hull has disappeared at H, the observer ascends from the elevation at C to a higher position nearer to E, it will again be seen. Thus, all the phenomena which have so long been considered as proofs of the Earth's rotundity are really optical sequences of the contrary doctrine. To argue that because the lower part of an outward-bound ship disappears before the highest, the water must be round, is to assume that a round surface only can produce this effect! But it is now showed that a plane surface necessarily produces this effect, and therefore the assumption is not required, and the argument involved is fallacious! It may here be observed that no help can be given to this doctrine of rotundity by quoting the prevailing theory of perspective. The law represented in the foregoing diagrams is the law of nature. It may be seen in every layer of a long wall, in every hedge and bank of the roadside, and indeed in every direction where lines and objects run parallel to each other. But no illustration of the contrary perspective is ever to be seen, except in the distorted pictures, otherwise cleverly and beautifully drawn as they are, which abound in our public and private collections. I should mention that even in 2015, such things have gotten much, much worse than they were back in the late 1800s. The theory which affirms that parallel lines converge only to one and the same point upon the eye line is an error. It is true only of lines equidistant from the eye line. It is true that parallel lines converge to one and the same eye line, but meet it at different distances when more or less apart from one another. This is the true law of perspective as shown by nature herself. Any other idea is fallacious and will deceive whoever may hold and apply it to practice. As it is of great importance that the difference should be clearly understood, the following diagram is given. Let EL in figure 17 represent the eye line and C the vanishing point of the lines 1C, 2C, and the lines 3, 4, 5, 6, although converging somewhere to the line EL, will not do so to the point C, but 3, 4, and will proceed to D, and 5 and 6 to H. It is repeated that lines equidistant from the datum will converge on the same point and at the same distance, but lines not equidistant will converge on the same datum, but at different distances. A very good illustration of the difference is given in figure 18. Theoretic perspective would bring the lines 1, 2, and 3 to the same datum line, EL, and to the same point, A. But the true or natural law would bring the lines 2 and 3 to the point A, because equidistant from the eye line, EL, but the line 1 being further from EL than either 2 or 3, would be taken beyond the point A on towards C until it formed the same angle upon the line EL as 2 and 3 form at the point A. The subject of perspective will not be rendered sufficiently clear unless an explanation be given of the cause and character of what is technically called the, quote, vanishing point. Why do objects, even when raised above the earth, vanish at a great distance? It is known and can only be easily proved by experiment that the, quote, range of the eye or diameter of the field of vision is 110 degrees. Consequently, this is the largest angle under which an object can be seen. The range of vision is from 110 degrees to 1 degree. Captain Ross, however, was himself greatly confused in his attempts to navigate the southern region. In his account of the voyage, he says at page 96, quote, we found ourselves every day from 12 to 6 miles by observation in advance of our reckoning, end quote. Quote, by our observations we found ourselves 58 miles to the eastward of our reckoning in 2 days, end quote. WW, the great deep, or the waters which surround the land, and N, the northern center, and SS, sections of the southern ice. At the present description is purely zetetic, and as every fact must therefore have its fullest value assigned to it, and its consequences represented, a peculiarity must be pointed out in the foregoing diagram. It will be observed that from about and seeing no prospect of success, was obliged to give up his attempt and return to the north. This he acknowledged in a letter to Captain Sir James Clark Ross, with whose intention to explore the South Seas he had become acquainted, in which the following words occur. Quote, I hope you intend to circumnavigate the Antarctic Circle. I made 70 degrees of it, end quote. And in this and other ways, all the great navigators have been frustrated in their efforts, and have been more or less confounded in their attempts to sail around the earth, upon or beyond the Antarctic Circle. But if the southern region is a pole or center like the north, there would be little difficulty in circumnavigating it, for the distance round would be comparatively small. When it is seen that the earth is not a sphere, but a plane having only one center, the north, and that the south is the vast icy boundary of the world, the difficulties experienced by circumnavigators can be easily understood. Having given a surface or bird's eye view of the earth, the following sectional representation will aid in completing the description. That's figure 11. EE represents the earth,